I was driving home from a nearby city. I was on the highway. There's a spot like where you enter the highway. And so I didn't hit the light there. So I went right onto the highway. I kept my momentum and I was going 70 plus miles an hour. And there was a semi truck that must have not hit the light green. So it wasn't going speed at all, maybe 30 or 40 miles an hour, pulling another truck. And at the same time, as I'm like loading onto the highway, I'm paying attention to the reservoir on the side of the road. Like, why isn't it frozen over? Are we going to get out of the statewide drought? Like, just the things that your brain runs to. And so when my brain came back to the road, it's like, oh, I'm coming up hot on this car or on the semi. So I look in my rearview mirror. I go to get over into the fast lane and I didn't make it. The second trailer hit my passenger headlight. And the second it hit, I watched it. And everything went from fast to slow motion and time dilated. And the minute I saw that and those two pieces hit, I'm like, okay, I promise I'll do something good with my life. Like, please let me live. And then my next thought was, the only people that survive accidents are people that don't know they're happening. And so I have to surrender to this car and I have to just roll with it. And I told myself, okay, put your hands on the steering wheel, your head on the headrest, and just breathe. And I told myself, I'm like, okay, I'm going to flip over once. I have enough momentum. I'm going to do a front flip again. I did the third front flip and I'm like, okay, now I'm losing momentum. I'm going to do some sideways rolls. So I did about 8 to 10 sideways rolls and ended up upside down in the median hanging. And then I'm bracing for another car to hit me because Hollywood has taught us like another vehicle is coming. And luckily for me, instead, is this person running towards the car and they're yelling, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I'm at that point where I can hear it, but I'm not registering it. Right? Like it's background noise at this point. And then he peels back the windshield and we catch eyes. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I looked at him and I'm like, I must not be. That guy's face is telling me I'm not okay. And so I closed my eyes and I wiggled my fingers and toes. I'm like, I can feel my fingers and toes. I can feel my fingers and toes. He's like, then I think you're going to be okay. And he's like, I'm just going to talk to you until the ambulance comes. And I just remember, like my first thought was, Jennifer, you should have said, I want to be alive with my body working. Like I was like, for a second there, I'm like, I said I wanted to be alive and I'm going to be paralyzed because I forgot to ask for that part. It was crazy.
The amount of thoughts that you had in this. I've spoken to people who survived accidents on this podcast countless times where they have no memory of any of it.
Oh, yeah. See, I was present.
Yeah, you
were. And I was present, I think, for two reasons. So when we have these line in the sand moments, which by the way, if you're listening, that can be your birthday, that can be the new year, that can be Friday. It can be right now, right? You can make a line in the sand moment anytime you want. And so for me, I made that accident a line in the sand moment for me. And I remember thinking to myself, my life before, I was double gripping and vice gripping and like holding on with all I needed. And the only reason why I survived that accident is because I let go. And so it was a big lesson in letting go and flowing with life. And then the other piece of that accident that stands out to me always is when we look outside ourselves to see if we're okay, they're always going to tell us we're not. Only when we close our eyes and really connect to who we are we allowed to say if we're okay or not.
So powerful.
Yeah. I mean, I still use it when I'm in hot spots or on the mountain or anywhere. If like my stories start getting written where I'm getting out of control, I close my eyes and I wiggle my fingers and toes. I'm like, I can feel my fingers and toes. Mm-hmm. Everything else is a story right now.
I mean, the power of the mind, and I talk to people about this all the time, our reticular activating system, and just the power of even just an affirmation. I coach a lot of women who think affirmations are woo-woo because my women are type A.
Yeah.
And they're like, they kind of give me a smirk and they're like, okay, honey, I don't need to tell myself, you're great in the mirror. And I'm like, let me tell you,
You do.
Because it's not woo-woo. It's actually science. It's neuroscience. And let me tell you what it's doing to your brain. Let me tell you the power of reframing something in your brain and having a new perspective. So it sounds like this left you on the other side with an entirely new perspective. Before we even get to the perspective, so you're hanging upside down in the car. Mm-hmm. What happened? What did you walk away with? What happened next?
Yeah. So he left me in the car because we were afraid something was going on and adrenaline was masking problems or whatever. And then when the ambulance came, they carried me out. I went to the hospital. They ran every test they could. And I was fine.
Oh my God.
I mean, fine.
Oh my God.
I went home the same day. And I will never, there's moments in your life that are just etched in your memory forever. And I remember opening the front door to my house and just standing in that doorway. And that's the first moment I allowed myself to feel. And I just was waterworking because you could hear the kids screaming. From where I was standing, you could see the pizza on the counter. You could life was happening. And before I would have been, why do we have rollerblades in the house? Or why is there pizza in the counter? Right. And at that moment, I'm like, this is so imperfectly perfect. It's amazing how much we miss that in our everyday lives. And just sitting there and being present to all the magic I'll never forget that moment.
Who was there when you went home? You said you had help. Like, was there family? Was there husband? There were 7 kids. How did your kids react?
Yeah. So the crazy thing is that there was a nanny there. And when the accident happened, a family 5 cars behind me knew me. So when they saw it was me, they got out, picked up all the stuff that came out of the car, and they went to my house and they told the nanny, like, hey, Jenn was in an accident. We think she's going to be fine. Do you guys need anything? We'll go buy food or whatever. And the nanny's like, what do I do? And they're like, don't worry, like, we'll help. This family sat in the hospital and I had no idea because the hospital doesn't tell you because they're not family. So this family sat in the hospital until I was released and then drove me home. Oh. Can you imagine? I mean,
I can, because people are inherently good and we forget that these days because that's not what we see.
Right. And so they drove me home and I every year on that car accident, I still call them and say, like, thank you for showing me like how amazing humanity is.
That makes me want to cry. That's beautiful. How did your kids respond when you walked in the door?
They didn't get it.
They didn't get it.
They didn't get it. They're too young. Yeah. They knew, they did notice me over the next few months. I shifted massively. So December 18 is exactly a week before Christmas. And so the Christmas before, I was the mom, and I'm embarrassed to even admit this, but I was the mom with the garbage bag, like right behind them, picking up all the trash and all this kind of stuff and watching them rip through presents and blah, 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 blah. And in this year, I just sat there in awe of these little fingers that opened presents and noticed like who ran to the next present and who thanked whoever gave it to them and who sat with what they had, right? Like everybody has such a unique response to all these things. And I just observed in awe. Like there was a mess on the floor for the entire day and I was okay with it.
That's so nice. That's amazing. So this is the 7-year anniversary of the accident coming up on it. Do I have that right?
6.
Yeah. It was 2018. Got it. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Incredible. So this obviously was kind of the realization moment about how you're choosing to live your life. It started with small perspective shifts with your kids. And then you realized you were living your life out of fear and you didn't want to be that way anymore. So tell me how that started to shift your thinking.
Yeah. So I got a phone call after the accident from the police. And they're like, we just want to let you know, we've rebuilt this accident every way we can to try to make this area of the highway safer. We cannot build a scenario where you live, let alone walk away. And I just was like, okay, I told the universe, God, whatever you want to believe, that I was going to do something significant. This is just more reminder that I need to do something with my life. That same week, a girlfriend of mine called to go running and it was wet out. I'm a fair weather runner. I'm like, I'm not going running in the rain, but thank you. And that afternoon, her husband called me and he goes, Jenn, she's not coming home. I'm like, what do you mean? She was running. It was wet. She slipped. She's hit her head on a rock and she's not coming home. And so I'm metabolizing this horrific car crash that should have killed me and my girlfriend running on a trail and never coming home. And so these two events happening so close together and at the same time, it like spun me into this deep reflective, like, what does this mean? Why are we here? What, you know, and the only thing that I could come out with that made any sense to me was we don't get to choose when we die, but we sure get to choose how we live. And was I really living? And I wasn't.